Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a couple different subscribers kind of ask me a little bit about push-pull legs programs. Now, I'm going to assume we're only talking about for hypertrophy here. And I think from now on I'm going to use the word hypertrophy or muscle growth instead of bodybuilding, because the word bodybuilding gets really misused lately in the fitness world when they really just mean training for hypertrophy and better body composition. They're not actually bodybuilding. That's an actual competitive endeavor. So we're just going to call this for hypertrophy. And it doesn't work for other things because most strength-oriented training or athletic-oriented training is going to make it hard to split your body up. That's one of the problems Jamie Lewis has with any sort of body part split, is that, well, what if I want to do push presses on that day or deadlifts? And that's one reason he threw out when he was becoming really a world-class powerlifter and a world champion, is that he realized that there was no point in trying to split things up because it limited your selection. And it created organizational patterns that people did for psychological reasons to split things up, that if you try to stick to them in any way can actually interfere with doing what might be your best exercises to do that day. So, well, how do you throw in deadlifts and push presses and things into any sort of split? And then it breaks down very quickly and people realize that splitting things up is done purely for your own mental organization. It has no real place as in anything other than a loose guideline for strength training. So when it comes to hypertrophy training, purely trying to gain size and improve body composition, can push-pull legs work? Yeah, absolutely. I'm only breaking down, when I say I have some issues with it, I'm only breaking down the problems with it. And it's not saying that if you happen to choose it and that's what you like, it's not saying that you're a dumb person or a bad person or that's less intelligent or there's any sort of moral value on it. You know what, guys? If you happen to like push-pull legs, we can still have a beer and be friends. It's not worth fighting over. But the issues with it, part of it is the way Jamie Lewis explains any sort of body part split. If you're doing it dogmatically, that I have to do push-only exercises this day or try to isolate things, you're very quickly going to find a lot of exercises that don't fit into your scheme well that would actually probably be your best exercises to use at that given time. The next problem you have is that when you compare it to things like full body, it comes to things like muscle protein synthesis. We know that a muscle, after you train it, it returns to baseline muscle protein synthesis within 48 hours pretty much every time. So if you're splitting things up to where a muscle's only getting hit once a week, so if you're doing push-pull legs as a 3-day-a-week program, and there's nothing wrong with being in the gym 3 days a week, you may not be maximizing on your muscle growth. You might actually get 10 or 15% more muscle growth if you were to do a higher frequency with all of those exercises. Now, granted, there can always be some overlap depending on what you pick. Obviously, if you're deadlifting on your pull day, you're getting a lot of extra work in certain muscles that aren't going to be used on other pulling movements. You can limit in many of the muscles that you guys might be trying to develop, things like biceps or triceps or shoulders or whatever. You guys are going to find that they may not actually be getting enough stimulation frequently enough on that type of training. And so how a lot of people fix that, they'll tend to do it at a higher frequency to where their push-pull legs ends up being a 5-day-a-week or a 6-day-a-week program. And for someone who's drug-free or someone who's not really young and healthy and have very good recovery, that's a good way to injure yourself, because people split things up usually so that they can do more volume. They're not coming in and doing the same amount of workload. They're wanting to do 10 sets or 12 sets for a muscle group. And when you start doing stuff like that on a split like that 6 days a week, it can bury a lot of people, and you're basically doing way more exercise and way more training than you actually need for maximal muscle growth at that point. You're just doing senseless exercises at a certain point and senseless volume that isn't making you grow any faster, particularly if you're not on drugs of any type. So what ends up happening is that you're spending way more hours in the gym than you need to reach your goals, and it just turns into exercise addiction, and in the worst case, it can predispose you to a higher injury rate. So it's kind of like there's a trade-off either way you go with push-pull legs, unless you're just doing it as a loose template and you're not trying to really stick to it. You just have days you say, well, I mostly want to work on pushing exercises today, but I might deadlift. I might do some chin-ups. At the end, if that's what you're doing as a focus, no big deal. That's cool, perfectly acceptable. But if you start splitting it up, you may not be really maximizing your gains. On the other hand, a lot of guys just really hate full body training, and they feel like they need a structured different type of day every time they're in the gym. But you need to remember, that's not physical, that's in your head, that's psychological. But if that is the way that you need to train personally, you're obviously going to make a lot better gains if you're more motivated and you're more consistent and you're not missing workouts because you get bored with more full body type training to where you're not changing things up much. And so if you're more consistent, more motivated, and actually trying harder because you actually enjoy what you're doing more, you're probably going to get better results doing that anyways, even though the other might actually be better physically. Being more consistent and being more motivated always produces better results. So if you're one of the guys who said, well, I tried the push-pull legs and I seemed to get better results in a full body, it was probably psychological because you just enjoyed it more. And you got better results because you came to the gym without missing workouts and you trained harder and you put more into it. And maybe the fact that you just liked it more carried over in your head to thinking that you got better results because you just enjoy what you're doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's you and that's the way that you need to train to stay motivated, then do a push-pull legs. Don't let me change your mind on it if that's truly what you enjoy. Because I don't want you to quit going to the gym. I don't want you to miss workouts. I don't want you to get inferior results. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. So I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.